What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season. And I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every specific team in a specific conference, just as a synopsis video of all of my schedule predictions. Those will be coming out later on, closer to the start of the season. We're getting close now. I'm running out of time. I got to start putting out more of these videos. But yeah, those conference things will come at the very end after I've done each individual Power 5 team. Anyway, though, let's go ahead and get into this Florida State schedule predictions. So just some quick thoughts on the Florida State program overall heading into 2022. This is a program that should be so much better than they actually are. And it just seems like every time we start to think that they're just about to turn that corner and get back to, that dominance or at least that elite level play of the past, they just disappoint and don't quite do it. And you have another year that it ends up being a disappointing season for them. And I thought last year would be a huge year for them, especially after how they opened the season against Notre Dame, but it ended up being a disappointing 5-7, which at this point kind of seems to be par for the course in Tallahassee, which is not what it should be. They should be much better than a 5-7, 6-6 type of team. But that's just kind of where they are. And this year honestly doesn't strike me as the year that Florida State returns to power either. While they may have some bright spots on the roster, there are a lot of holes as well. I expect them to be a decent team next year, but not what they should be, knowing this program's history. And I do have to wonder just how much longer Mike Norvell is going to have if he can't start to turn things around down there soon. And, I know they've got some recruiting momentum going, but not as much as the other teams in their state and in their conference. And it's an interesting situation in Florida State right now because, again, I think they're going to be pretty decent this year, but they're just not where they should be being Florida State, So let's just go ahead and look at some teams that really aren't worth talking about because the opponents just don't have much of a chance of winning, barring something catastrophic. And there's only one of those teams for Florida State this year, and that is Duquesne in week 0, really, which I'm going to get into here as we start to look at the schedule. Florida State's early season lines up very weird. They play in week 0, August 27th on a Saturday against Duquesne. Should be a very easy win, not even really worth discussing. But then they don't play until Sunday of the following week. So instead of playing on Saturday, they play on a Sunday. And they play LSU there. And it's a neutral site. It's in the Superdome in New Orleans. It's not a neutral site. It's a home game for LSU, basically. I think LSU is a better roster than Florida State at this point. I know they're in year 1 under Brian Kelly. There's a lot of unknown there. I don't think LSU is going to be an amazing team by any means, but they're a very good team. They're in New Orleans. It's a night game. It'll be LSU's opener for the season. It's a game that I don't see Florida State faring too incredibly well in. I think they'll be competitive throughout the first half, but I think LSU pulls away and gets a win later into the season. And then you get a week 2/week 3, depending on if you want to count week 0 as week 1 or whatever. But yeah, right after LSU, you get a bye week, and I don't like that from a scheduling perspective. That's an incredibly early bye week. I know you only get it because they played in week 0, not week 1, but I'm still not a big fan of it. And then they play their next game their third game, at Louisville on a Friday. And so, they go Saturday week 0, Sunday week 1, bye week 2, and then on a Friday in week 3. It's just a lot of weird scheduling stuff there that I'm not a huge fan of. I think it can be a little bit distracting, especially for a team like Florida State. And, they get 12 days between the LSU game and the Louisville game. And that is normally considered a good thing if you're in the middle of a season when you need some time to recuperate and refocus. But this early in the year, I don't really know how much benefit it's going to be. It could work out well for them. It could also backfire and them lose focus and things get kind of weird, especially that early on in the season. So, recapping though, I have them beating Duquesne, obviously, and then losing to LSU. They get the bye week. They go at Louisville. I think they lose at Louisville. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think the two rosters are basically even, but I like Louisville's team better almost. I like the way that it fits together better. I feel like they have less glaring weaknesses. They are at home. Their schedule makes more sense to me, and I think Louisville's going to get a hard-fought win there. It is a very winnable game for Florida State, though. Don't get me wrong and think that Louisville's just going to blow them out. They're not. But I do think Louisville gets a big win here. Going to be a very interesting game to watch. I'm excited to see how that one plays out. But I think Louisville, like I said, gets the win there. And then you go to, home game against Boston College is up next. And Boston College is a team that I think is about equal with Florida State roster-wise at this point. But Florida State is the home team. It's a long trip for Boston College. I do think Florida State probably has a slight talent edge there. And so I'm going to have Florida State getting a win there. Very close game. Could go either way, really. Not one that you want to overlook by any means. But I think Florida State is just a little bit better than Boston College. And so they get the win. And then they have Wake Forest coming to Tallahassee, and Wake Forest is a team I'm very high on. I think they're going to be very, very good, even at a national level next season. I think their offense is going to be absolutely outstanding. Now, their defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but their offense is going to be absolutely outstanding. I think Wake is just a better football team than Florida State at this point. I think they go in there and they get a big win. And then Florida State goes at NC State. And this is one where NC State is likely the better team, but I do have Florida State getting a win, and it's really just because I think Florida State gets an upset somewhere in their schedule, be it Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson, or Miami. Somewhere in those games, I think they get an upset. I'm going to pick it to be NC State. It's not really, something where I think Florida State's the better team or anything like that. I just think that that's probably where the upset's going to come. I think NC State may get a little bit, just may overlook them a little bit, and it is at home for NC State, so it's a very tough game. It's a very losable game for Florida State. They're good enough to win it as well. That's really true of most all games on the schedule. Florida State is good enough to get wins in these games. They're just not good enough to be favored in a lot of these games. So I think they end up getting the win there against NC State on the road. Very tough one, though. Definitely an upset type of situation. Not something that you should really expect to happen necessarily. Next game up is Clemson, and yes, they get Clemson at home, but Clemson is just a much better team than them at this point. They have much more talent. I trust their coaching staff much more. I think Clemson's probably going to win this game by 2 or 3 scores. It's a game where if Florida State has some things go their way and Clemson's offense is struggling as much as they did last year, then Florida State has a shot in it for sure. But I do think Clemson is just a much better team. Next game up is Georgia Tech, and they're coming off a bye in that one. Florida State is a better team than Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is not bad in the sense that they will be competitive here. They're not going to just lay down and get blown out. But Florida State is a much better team here. I think Florida State gets a pretty easy win, all things considered. And then you go at Miami, and this is one that is sort of interesting in the whole battle for Florida kind of thing. And they're both similar programs in a lot of ways, where they have in their history, they have very strong history, but recently they've been down. But with Mario Cristobal at Miami, I really like the direction they have going. They have a lot of momentum. They have the better quarterback by far in this game in Tyler Van Dyke, and Miami's just in a better spot than Florida State is right now. It kind of just is what it is. They're the home team there as well. I think Miami gets a big win, a game, another one Florida State will be competitive in, could win. I don't think they will, though. Next team up is at Syracuse. Syracuse is kind of one of the bottom feeders in the conference. They will be again next year, most likely. I think Florida State is noticeably better than them. Now, it is a long road trip up to Syracuse, but, Syracuse doesn't have much of a home field advantage to be spoken of either. I think they get a pretty easy win there. And then a very interesting out-of-conference game with the G5. They play the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, who will be with a new head coach this year, as their head coach is at Florida now. But Louisiana is a very good G5 team. Now, they're not as good of a team as Florida State is, but they are a very good G5 team. Not a team to be taken lightly necessarily. I do think Florida State gets a win here, but you have to be careful not to get look ahead into their rivalry game against Florida to end the season. I don't think they will. But yeah, very, very interesting matchup there. I think Florida State is better. I think they get the win, but definitely one to be on edge for, keep an eye out for. Don't just walk in expecting an easy win. And then they end the season against Florida, and this is one where Florida is a better roster and probably going to be a better team than them next year, but it's closer than it has been in years past. Years past, Florida has kind of just had a dominant advantage in this one. It'll be closer than that, especially with Florida in year one under Billy Napier, but I do think Florida is the better team. I think they have a better quarterback, and I think they have a better roster top to bottom. I think they get the win there. Definitely a winnable game for Florida State, though. Could be a nice way to cap off the season with a nice home win to round out the year against their rival, but I just don't see it. I think Florida ends up getting the win there. And so that would make Florida State 6-6 on the season, which is not what fans want, but it's about the best I can really see them doing. I mean, 5-7 is also very possible with a pretty sneakily difficult schedule that Florida State has. I mean, I doubt a 6-6 season is enough to cause a coaching change down there, but it's also not going to do anything to appease the Florida State fans and administration, in my opinion, either. And I can understand why, because there's no reason that the roster should be in this poor of shape at this point. And while they aren't a bad team at all, they also aren't even in the same category as teams like Clemson. And really, right now, even Miami seems to have passed them up, not to mention Florida has been better than them by a wide margin as of late as well. So even though 6-6 is a respectable season for most programs, you almost have to expect more out of a program as storied as Florida State. I just really don't see more this year, to be honest. You know, maybe they get some wins against teams like Louisville or Miami or maybe Wake Forest. They can also very easily lose to NC State or Boston College as well. I mean, they're on pretty equal footing with the middle of their conference, and I just don't think that's good enough for a program of this stature. And when you're on even footing with the middle teams of your conference, yeah, you might get a couple upsets, but you're also probably going to drop some games you think you should win. So yeah, 6-6 is where I have Florida State. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree and or disagree with me on the Florida State schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they'll lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm going to be putting out one for every Power 5 team and a conference synopsis for every team. So a lot of content will be coming very quickly here soon as I try to push all this in before we get to the start of the season. So be on the lookout for that, and check out some of my other schedule predictions if you haven't. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.